Good evening. Welcome to Adult Storytime. I'm E.R.A, and this week we're going to be reading Chapter 2 of my book, The Clinic. Chapter 2 is very graphic, thematically horrifying, and it has a lot of heavy topics in it, so be prepared to be very frightened. Chapter 2, Foster Care Reform. Courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. You can practice any virtue erratically, but nothing consistently without courage. Maya Angelou. John Miller didn't believe in God. He knew too well all the things a man can get away with if he's careful and smart. He'd been having his way with the girls for over 30 years, and God never stopped him once, no matter how much they begged, cried, or prayed. Go ahead, pray louder, then maybe God will hear you. John chuckled maniacally, his ice blue eyes glittering wildly. He grabbed the frail girl and slapped her across the face. This one was 9, the perfect age to him. Not so young that she would be confused by what was happening, but still small enough to rip apart when he did his business. He accidentally killed one that was too small years ago. The baby wasn't 1 year old yet, and he tore open her insides when he went at her. It was amazing, the hot blood pouring over his manhood. He'd never enjoyed himself so much, but he couldn't afford to kill them. He had to be able to send them on their way when they were grown with no one the wiser. He was lucky that time. He was able to get rid of the body and say the baby's dad stole her from the playpen in the backyard during a scheduled visit. John had to kill the baby's father, but it wasn't hard. He bashed him in the head with a shovel a few times. John bagged up the father and the baby, then dumped them at a nearby landfill. Over 20 years later, and they still hadn't been found. Even if the bodies were discovered, they probably wouldn't know who they belonged to, and they wouldn't suspect him. John Miller is considered a saint in town for taking care of all these unwanted children. He could never get away with something like that now. People were too carefully watched and tracked these days. He sure missed simpler times and all the freedoms that went with them. Please, Mr. Miller, don't hurt me anymore. The little girl stopped praying and started begging him. I see you figured out who is God around here. John laughed as he grabbed the girl by her thick black hair and drug her to the bed. Just as he was about to really have fun, there was a loud knocking at the front door. If you make a sound, I swear I'll kill you and your baby sister, and I'll start with her. Do you understand me? Little Bridget nodded at him as she crawled into a corner of the room, her large dark eyes full of terror, and a purple handprint covering half her golden face. John shut the bedroom door. How can I help you? John answered the door with his most benevolent smile. I'm Agent Washington from the WPO Child Services Department. There's been quite a lot of reform and things are going to be changing soon. Can I come in? We have a great deal to discuss, said the beautiful dark umber woman with a bright smile. Sure, come on in. John moved his large frame from the door and pointed to a threadbare couch in the entry room. Great, Agent Washington replied as she sat on the couch and opened her briefcase. Is Miss Miller available? This concerns both of you, and I'd like her to be present. She had to go to her cancer specialist up north. She'll be back tonight. I'm sure I can fill her in on all the details when she gets home. All right then, Mr. Miller. WPO has defunded foster care and adoption programs. If natural parents are unable to take responsibility for their children, then the children will be assigned to the clinic or the camp as age appropriate. You're going to write off all those kids? What about childless couples or children being our future? Adoption hardly ever happened since we perfected the Child by Design program. Natural birth is down 73%. Parents want their kids to have the best genetics possible, and we've gotten a lot stricter on licensing. Beyond this, children from foster care programs rarely become productive members of our society. This is the humane choice. Why burden the children with terrible lives and do it on the bill of good tax-paying citizens? What if we adopt the kids here? That's a great sentiment, but the children that leave your care are some of the most damaged we've seen. You shouldn't be approved to provide foster care, let alone an adoptive family. The only reason you're included in our system is that you were already fostering prior to the leveling, and we had nowhere else to place the children in your care at the time. I don't know how you slid by unnoticed all these years. It's only by the grace of the WPO that you and your wife haven't ended up at the camp or the compound yourselves. Okay, since there's no changing it, when and how are you going to take them? I'll be back on Monday with a bus. The children don't need to bring anything with them. It's probably best if you tell them we're taking them for physical and vaccinations. I don't want the girls unduly alarmed. Agent Washington handed John the orders as she closed her briefcase and stood to leave. Unduly, huh? I guess that'd be a matter of opinion, John grumbled as he followed the agent to the door. Her red business jacket like a flag enraging him. He couldn't wait to get back to Bridget. Mr. Miller, I expect the children ready and in good spirits when I come for them on Monday. We'll arrive between 2 and 3 o'clock. As John Miller closed the door, his anger overwhelmed him. How dare they? Who the hell do they think they are taking away his girls? He'd have to think on it while he worked Bridget over. Sometimes he got his best ideas when he let himself relax and have a good time. Deanna Miller was neither evil nor ignorant, just incredibly weak and gullible. She was only 13 when her daddy made her marry John after he got her pregnant. John was 22 and forced himself on her when her mother sent her over to fetch his laundry. Her mother earned extra money for the family doing chores for the neighbors, laundry, cleaning, and a little bit of cooking when needed. She often had Deanna help her as soon as the girl was big enough to carry a basket. It was a hot, musty afternoon the day John had his way with her. Deanna screamed and cried and tried to wriggle away, but John was powerful, ferocious, and almost twice her size. He took her in the weeds behind his house. No one heard her cries or came to help. The neighborhood kids were at school and the adults off at work. When she got back home, her mama yelled at her, "Girl, what did you do? Were you showing your legs, smiling and flirting with the poor man, being a wanton harlot? John Miller is a good man, and we can't afford to lose the money he pays this family every week. I can't believe you did this to us." Deanna ran out to the back porch and sat there crying until her daddy came home. Then she got the worst beating of her young life. Later, she'd endured many worse from John, but up until that point, she'd only suffered an occasional whipping. She was completely unprepared for the rape, shaming, and assault she endured that day. It made a permanent cloud over her soul. She knew her place, and it was beneath John. They were married 4 months later when Deanna's belly made the repercussions of John's attack blatantly visible to the world. John didn't seem to mind marrying her. She was a tiny thing and looked younger than she was. He had a live-in child servant he could rape at will. Occasionally he was kind to her, but Deanna was happiest when he ignored her. When Deanna was 7 months pregnant, she made a terrible mistake. "John, aren't you excited to meet our baby? I can't wait to see what he'll look like. Will he have your yellow hair or brown like mine? I'm sure he'll be handsome like you," Deanna said wistfully as she rocked in her chair in the living room while sewing the baby a soft blue sleeping gown. "Woman, are you stupid? That baby is a girl," John growled at her. Nowadays, Deanna would have stopped speaking at this moment, but back then she was only 13 and didn't know the monster that John was. "Oh no, John, I'm sure he's a boy. I can feel him inside me. He's got a kind soul. He radiates love from within me. I can't wait for him to get here." John stared hard at Deanna, then quietly got up from his chair and grabbed her by the hair. He dragged her to the floor, crying and screaming, then started kicking her in the stomach. When she rolled over and tried to crawl away, he broke her favorite rocking chair across her back, knocking her to the ground again. He turned her over and stomped on her stomach repeatedly until she started gushing blood from between her legs. And then he went back to his chair and sat down. Deanna was right. He was a beautiful baby boy, and John destroyed him like an unwanted toy. Deanna lost the baby she already loved dearly. and the ability to have another. She barely survived the attack and had permanent spinal damage. She walked dragging her right leg, and on bad days needed a cane. All this suffering before her 14th birthday, but she never lost her faith in God. No matter how badly John beat and tortured her, he could not extinguish her faith. It became a cruel game for him over the years. Deanna Miller, the X-ray technician, called out to the waiting room. Deanna followed the young woman down to radiology so she could get a new set of lung images. She didn't know why they were bothering, probably for the hefty fee the Millers paid them. She knew the cancer was there, and she was sure the doctors did too. She could feel it eating at her. She hoped it would finish her soon. Deanna traveled hours to come to this cancer treatment facility. The care they provided was fair, but if the Millers had more money, she'd already have a new pair of lungs and a clean bill of health. But they didn't, so she received minimal care while waiting for the cancer to end her life. She wanted to schedule an appointment at the compound for euthanization, but John wouldn't hear of it. He always got his way. Over the years, she'd tried to protect the girls the best she could. She attempted to run away, but had nowhere to go and owned nothing herself. She tried to leave the WPO foster program so he wouldn't have access to children anymore. But John pointed out if they weren't providing a home for the kids, then they'd end up at the camp. Neither of them had any education or special skills. She stayed fostering the girls and did her best to keep them from John's anger, even if she had to take on their beatings herself. Sometimes Deanna believed the cancer was God finally answering her prayers, freeing her from John's strangling grasp. She understood God's promise to give man his freedom is what let John do his evil without her prayers intervening, but it was a bitter thing to accept. Maybe by giving over her life to God, he would take her to heaven and away from all this. On her drive back to the house, Deanna considered veering off one of the mountainous ledges and speeding up her end. But she believed the Bible and didn't want to lose her chance at peace with her Lord and Savior. She would have to let things unfold as God willed it. Deanna entered the dark hallway of her home, expecting nothing but silence of sleeping. Instead, she heard a faint whimpering coming from one of the girls' bedrooms. She followed the muffled noise down the hall to the very last door. She looked inside and found Lily sleeping with her chubby toddler arms hugging her baby blanket and curled up next to Stacy, their black hair mixing together. The other bed in the room, the one Lily usually shared with her big sister Bridget, was empty. The crying was coming from the bathroom on the other side of the girls' bedroom. "Hello? Bridget, honey? Are you okay?" Deanna opened the bathroom door and turned on the light, then immediately wanted to turn it off again to block out the horrific scene in front of her. Bridget lay naked on the floor, her face gashed and swollen, her body slicked with blood, and more blood creating a large pool beneath her bottom. Deanna knew John hurt the kids, but he never suspected he was hurting them like this or forcing himself on them. Now everything made sense to Deanna, and it was time to involve the authorities and end his twisted tyranny. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone, then felt a huge force knock her down from behind. "Stupid fucking cow! What do you think you're doing? Drop that phone now!" "You're sick, John. Sick and evil as Satan himself." "I enjoy myself, and these dirty little bitches deserve it. They ain't nothing but castaways and nobody cares about them. If you call the authorities, you're going to get these kids killed today. They've done away with fostering, and the girls are going to the clinic on Monday." John slavered and shouted as he stood menacingly over Deanna. "Okay, John, okay. Let me up to help the girl and clean this mess." Deanna said in a submissive voice with her eyes cast down to the floor. He had to believe she was broken. John moved back and let Deanna get up. She went over to the tub and started a warm bath. She carefully lifted Bridget and placed the crying child into the lukewarm water. It turned pink from all the blood covering Bridget. "It's okay, sweetheart. Let me help you." Deanna said as she gingerly washed the girls' wounds with baby soap, hoping to minimize the stinging. John had no interest in watching this nonsense and stormed back to his bed. Let the foolish woman waste her time cleaning up the slut if it made her feel better. He already got what he wanted. Maybe tomorrow he'd get little Lily. He'd probably kill her. He'd wanted to rape a baby to death again since he did it the first time, but never had the opportunity. Now that Deanna knew and the kids were being removed, he didn't have anything to hide. In fact, he had the entire weekend to indulge, and he didn't have to be careful anymore. The next morning, Deanna made all John's favorite breakfast dishes. She even managed to find bacon, which they hadn't tasted in over a year. The kitchen smelled amazing and the day was golden beautiful. Usually Deanna would prop open the kitchen door to enjoy a fresh breeze, but this morning she left it closed, just in case. "What have you done, woman? We can't afford to be eating like this," John growled as he walked into the kitchen. "Sure we can. Pretty soon we won't be needing any of this anymore," Deanna said kindly, managing a smile for John. John decided she must be terrified he was going to kill them and trying to butter him up so he didn't. Maybe the old bag wasn't as stupid as she acted. "All right then. Girls, time to come eat. Miss Miller's made a feast," John bellowed out into the house. Only 4 of the 6 girls made their way into the kitchen. Bridget and Lily were missing. "Stacy, please serve Mr. Miller and the kids while I go check on Bridget and Lily." "Yes, ma'am," the teenager replied. She piled a plate with eggs, bacon, and pancakes, then placed it in front of John and started preparing the next plate. "Oh, here is your coffee, John. Sorry, I almost forgot." Deanna offered him another smile as she handed him the cup. She watched him take a drink and settle in to eat before she turned to go check on the children. At first, Deanna didn't spot Bridget or Lily. Then she noticed the corner of a pink baby blanket sticking out from under the girls' bed. They were curled up together under the bed, pressed tightly against the wall. Bridget was still sleeping, but Lily was chewing on her blanket with an apprehensive look on her face. "Hey, baby, would you like to come have something to eat?" Lily shook her head and tried to squeeze herself underneath Bridget. The pressure made Bridget wake with a yelp of pain. "Miss Miller, is it safe?" Bridget asked in a whisper. "I think you're all right for now. Why don't you come try to eat something, at least for Lily's sake? I'll do my best to keep him from you, but I need your help. Don't cry or let Lily cry and concentrate on your breakfast. Afterwards, I have some business to discuss with Mr. Miller. When we go to our room, I want you to get the girls in the basement and hide. Don't come out no matter what you hear unless it's me telling you we're going for a ride. Do you understand?" Deanna was hoping the girl could still focus on her words and get around with the pain that she was in. "Yes, I can do it, I promise," Bridget said as she gently nudged Lily to crawl out from under the bed. It took her a few minutes, but Bridget managed to pull herself out and up to her feet. They all went to the kitchen together, Miss Miller carrying Lily. "What the hell are you doing carrying that kid? You're going to spoil her," John bellowed as the 3 entered the kitchen. He didn't care what Deanna did with the brat, but he wanted a reason to yell and scare Bridget. Her fear made his fantastic breakfast even better. Deanna sat Lily at the table and served the girls. "Can I get you some more coffee, John?" "Yeah, but don't put so much damn sugar in it this time. After all these years, you'd think you'd know how to make a decent cup of coffee." "Sorry, John. I'll make it better this time." Breakfast took 45 minutes by the time everyone cleared their plates. Some of the girls had 2 and 3 helpings. John would have usually hollered at them and kept the kids from getting more, but about 20 minutes into breakfast, he started getting a dazed look on his face. He used all his concentration to finish his food and second cup of coffee. Deanna cleared the table with the children's help. She turned off the coffee machine and poured the rest of the pot into the sink. "John, honey, you look a little peaked. We should get you to bed. Maybe you're coming down with the cold." John slowly stood up from the table and almost fell. Deanna went over and let him lean on her all the way to their bed. She helped him remove his shoes and lay comfortably. Then she sat on the end of the bed watching him drift off. When she was sure he was sleeping deeply, she slipped out of the room. As she headed to the garage, she noticed there wasn't a sign of the girls. Bridget did as she promised. "Deanna, you bitch! What the hell are you doing?" John Miller woke to a room pitch black with nightfall and his arms and legs bound to the bed. A light went on. Deanna stood at the end of the bed holding his rusty old work hammer and studying him intensely. "I didn't think you'd sleep that long. I really couldn't afford to lose the time, but I had to make sure you slept deeply. I'm happy I found a use for those sleeping pills the cancer doctors keep getting us to buy." "Deanna, have you lost your mind? You can't get away with this." "John, what makes you think I care? I have nothing. My whole life you made sure I only had misery and fear. Now I find out what you've been doing to those poor babies. It is blasphemy, and you don't deserve to exist," Deanna said in a calm, strong voice John hadn't heard before. She had a resolve he didn't recognize on her. "Now, John, I need some information from you. If you give it to me, then things will go easier for you, but if you don't, well, I'm not threatening you, but I don't recommend it." "I'm going to kill you for this, you worthless whore." "Maybe you will, John, but not at this moment. This moment belongs to me." Deanna moved closer to the bed next to John's right hand. "Where is the tackle box?" Deanna asked as she lifted the hammer. "I don't know what you're talking about," John said, watching her. Deanna brought the hammer down quickly 3 times on John's right hand. Crack, crack, crack! John screamed in agony. "If you don't stop hollering, I will shut you up. Now where is the tackle box?" Deanna asked as she moved to the other side of the bed. "I got rid of that thing years ago." "All right." Deanna took a kitchen rag out of the pocket in her apron and stuffed it in John's mouth. 3 more cracks as she smashed John's left hand while he screamed into the rag and tears ran down his face. She gave him a few minutes to compose himself, then pulled out the rag. "John, I'm getting tired of this. I'm going to end it soon. And how horrible that ending will be depends on you. Tell me where the tackle box is." "I'm not telling you anything, you dumb bitch. Help!" Deanna quickly stuffed the rag back in John's mouth. They had a large 7-acre lot, so the only ones hearing this might be the girls, but it didn't hurt to be careful. Besides, she was hoping to keep this ugliness from the unfortunate little things. They had already been through enough. Deanna had tied John's spread eagle to the bedpost while he was passed out from the sleeping pill she added to his morning coffee. She used the strongest rope and twine she found in the garage. He groaned a few times while she was binding him, but never woke. He probably had 100 loops around each appendage. She hadn't tied someone up before and wanted to make sure he couldn't get away. Now he was awake and unable to free himself. Deanna crawled over John's legs to sit between them in the center of the bed. It was hard for her, and she had to drag her right leg into position. When she was settled, she prepared herself. "I don't believe you, John. After everything you've done to me and the children, at least you can give us this. Don't you worry for your soul?" "There is no such thing as souls, and definitely no God, you dumb cunt. Look at your life. Not one prayer fucking answered, but I got everything and anything I wanted." "Oh, John, I realize only we can answer most of our prayers. God takes care of our souls after. He doesn't meddle in this life. God gave us freedom. I should have left you instead of sitting around praying for what I could do myself. God helps those who help themselves." She reached up and stuffed the rag back in his mouth so violently he began gagging. She wrapped her hands into the waistband of his pants and pulled them down. Then she pulled down his underwear. She used the curved part of the hammer made for pulling nails to cup underneath John's left testicle. His eyes rolled around in terror. Deanna pulled with both hands and used every bit of strength on the hammer's handle until she felt the satisfying rip of the skin around his testicle coming free. John, wake up. We're not finished here." "Where is the box?" John opened his eyes and looked at the ruin between his legs. It was then he realized he was going to die. "I can do this all night, John, even all weekend if I have to. You still have the other one hanging on halfway and that thing here in the middle. After what you used it for, you know I don't mind destroying it. You better tell me where the tackle box is." Deanna looked into John's eyes with a fierce and terrifying righteousness. It's in the trunk of the car. You have to lift the panel that covers the spare tire. It's hidden behind the tire towards the back of the trunk, John cried in a voice hoarse with pain and tears. You made the right choice, John. Now we can get this terrible thing over with. Deanna crammed the rag back into John's mouth. She reached behind her, grabbed a scarf, and tied it around his head to ensure the rag stayed in place. She used a hammer's claw to cut the skin covering John's right testicle, then ripped it away. She aimed the hammer's head at his penis and started pounding it down like a nail. Thunk, thunk, thunk. She pounded it until his penis and the flesh of his abdomen beneath looked like bloody whipped puree. She was sure he would probably die from these wounds, but she didn't want to take chances. She took the hammer and beat his head in until his brain spilled out onto the pillow. Deanna kneeled in front of the cross on the bedroom wall. God, please forgive me for the suffering I helped this man bring onto innocent children. May this be the beginning of my repentance. Please help me save the girls and continue to make amends. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Deanna took a quick shower and put on a professional-looking business dress. She combed her hair neatly and checked her fingernails to make sure she had removed all the blood from under them. It was time to get the girls prepared for their trip. Deanna opened the basement door and shouted, "We're going for a ride, kids! Come get your things ready!" The girls came up the stairs quietly. Even Lily didn't make a peep. They heard a lot more than Deanna wanted them to, but they weren't afraid of her. They were grateful and in awe of her, an unlikely superhero willing to fight for them. Amanda, do you know how to drive? Deanna asked the tall brunette 16-year-old. Only automatic. I'll probably be okay in your car, but not Mr. Miller's truck. That will work fine. We won't fit in one vehicle, so you can take my car and have Stacy, Bridget, and Lily ride with you. I'll take the twins with me in the truck. The 11-year-old twin Gingers were petite, quiet, and sweet. They wouldn't mind being all in one truck seat with Miss Miller. Also, Lily needed her safety chair in the back seat of the car and had to travel with her sister and Stacy for her to behave. Okay, grab whatever you want to take with you that will fit in one big trash bag. We need to leave here soon. Don't worry over things. We can always get more. Only bring what's special to you. I want you to wash up and put on your nicest play outfits in case we stop anywhere. Nothing fancy to make us stand out, but you need to look well cared for. Don't go in my bedroom. Mr. Miller is resting, and I don't want him disturbed. Amanda and Stacy, come into the kitchen with me for a minute while the girls get started. Deanna, Amanda, and Stacy sat around the kitchen table. Deanna had a moment to run to the garage and grab the tackle box. She opened it and began taking out the gold coins, jewelry, and paperwork. I'm going to be honest with you. WPO has canceled adoption and foster care programs. They have scheduled for the two of you to be sent to the camp and the rest of the girls to the clinic on Monday. The paperwork on the table is the order they brought John yesterday. John and I own a cabin by a lake up north that very few people know about. It was built by John's great-grandfather, and he hasn't been to it since he was a child. There is a map on the table with directions on it. I'm taking the younger girls there and hoping to buy us enough time to find a way to save them. You two may be able to work your way out of the camp. I don't know much about it, but I believe the other girls have no chance. I think the WPO are terminating any children they take to the clinic. Now, do you want to go with us like I planned, or do you want to take your chances at the camp? If we're caught, it will probably be the maximum penalty for us all. Amanda stared at her hands and said softly, I could never leave the twins. I've taken care of them the last 7 years. I'll take my chances with you. You already know my answer. We're a family and we stay together, Stacy said resolutely. All right, let's hurry and get out of here. We're only going to have a few days head start, and the cabin is at least a 3-day drive. Everyone needs to leave their phones and computers here. No devices. I'm going to put everything back in the box, and it will be in the car trunk behind the spare tire. Amanda grabbed a large trash bag, handed one to Stacy, and went to get the few things she had. While Amanda was throwing her clothes in a bag, she noticed her phone on the bed. Miss Miller was right. She couldn't dare bring it, but she couldn't disappear and not talk to Justin again. He was her best friend, and other than the twins, the closest thing to family she had. One quick call shouldn't cause any trouble. "Hello?" said a sleepy voice. "Hey, Justin. I have to leave. I won't be back and I can't take a phone with me, but I wanted you to know I'm okay and I love you. I'll get in touch with you again when I can." Amanda quickly whispered, just in case Miss Miller might not be okay with the phone call she was making. "What are you talking about? You sound crazy. Don't run away. You're almost out of foster care." WPO isn't funding foster care or adoptions anymore. Little kids go straight to the clinic and us older ones are taken to the camp. Miss Miller thinks they are terminating all the kids at the clinic, even the ones older than 5. She is going to try and save us. And you won't believe this, but she killed Mr. Miller. He hurt Bridget so bad she finally caught on to what he was doing. He deserved it. Let me know when you're safe. Getting away will be hard with chip tracking. Don't forget to make everyone cover their wrists. Even bracelets would be better than exposed wrists. You never know where a scanner is. I wish I could help you. Justin was only 15, but had seen enough horror to know life was seldom kind. He was 4 years old during the leveling and 10 when he suffered at the Millers. "It's okay. I think Miss Miller can do this. She's changed, Justin. I have to go. Love you. Bye." Amanda looked at the scan code, branded on her wrist sadly. How were they going to manage this? If you covered the markings, there was still the chip beneath. Deanna went from room to room helping the girls get ready and making sure they looked tidy. Everyone had bright kerchiefs or bracelets on their right wrists. She grabbed food and drinks from the kitchen and started filling up the back of the truck. She also put some food and water in the car trunk. She piled meat, cheese, and fruit on the kitchen table along with several large glasses of milk. "Girls, come here," Deanna called from her chair at the table. The girls walked into the kitchen. They hadn't had lunch or supper. "Sit down and eat as much as you can. We have some things that will keep and a small cooler, but it will probably be a long time before you'll have a good meal again." The girls sat down and within 15 minutes the table offered not a scrap and every glass was empty. Stacy started to clean up, but Miss Miller stopped her. There was no sense in it. "We're not coming back here, no matter what happens," Deanna said resolutely. "Start loading your things in the car or truck, whichever you're riding in. Stacy, put Lily's safety chair in the car and put one of her nighttime diapers on her. Amanda, make sure there are 8 water bottles in both vehicles. Make sure you use the restroom before we leave. We have to stop as little as possible," Deanna said while grabbing her purse and walking to the truck. It took close to an hour to get everyone situated into both vehicles. Lily was asleep before they started the drive. Amanda and Stacy fell into the roles of co-protectors quickly, with Amanda behind the wheel and Stacy caring for Bridget and Lily. Bridget was terrified and excited. With Mr. Miller gone, this nightmare was still infinitely better than her life before it, if they somehow managed to stay alive. The twins, Jasmine and Lucky, sat quietly next to Deanna as she started the truck. Jasmine staring at her with dark-fringed obsidian eyes. Although they were both ginger-haired, Jasmine's was darker, and Lucky had light hazel eyes. They were both exceptionally beautiful, intelligent, and kind. All the girls in her care were incredible and precious. Deanna had to help them get a chance at life, whatever it took. "I don't want you girls to be afraid," Deanna said as she drove down the winding road that led off the property. "Things are going to be hard for a while, sometimes terrible, but God will protect us." The girls hadn't slept the entire night back at the house. Everyone except Amanda and Deanna rested for the first 6 hours of the drive. Amanda was following Deanna, but she had the map to the cabin under her seat in case they got separated. Amanda was exhausted, but terror kept her heart pounding and her mind alert. "Gotta go potty! Amanda, potty now!" Lily's brown eyes were alert and distressed. "Okay, Lily, just a minute. Let me find a potty for you. Please try to hold it." Amanda couldn't figure out how to let Deanna know they needed to stop. Lily would pee in her diaper when she was sleeping or sometimes accidentally, but she always used the potty for number 2. Amanda decided the best way would be to use the right lane to pass Deanna so she could see them pulling off the highway. They were fortunate because a rest stop was less than a mile ahead. They could also feel the vehicles. Amanda pulled in front of Deanna and signaled her intent to leave the highway. She was relieved when Deanna followed. The rest stop was empty, and the fueling station was automatic. It looked like their luck was holding out. Stacy and Bridget woke up. Everyone visited the facilities, including the twins and Deanna. They refueled the cars and parked next to each other under a shady tree and ate bread, cold canned beans, and apples in the vehicles. Another visit to the restrooms, and the group was on their way again. 3 more hours of driving, and Amanda started losing focus on the road. She needed sleep. They were passing through a heavily forested wildlife park. Maybe they could go far enough down a back road, and rest pulled off to the side. Amanda swerved carefully in front of Deanna again and turned off on the first dirt road that led into the trees. A few miles down was a large rest area with bathrooms and picnic tables. It was another blessing for them. Amanda parked next to the tables and Deanna pulled in alongside her. Girls, go ahead and use the restroom, then grab the blankets and the red cooler from the back of the truck. Amanda, lock the car. Let's go rest up in the trees. It's better to travel at night anyway, and we need some sleep, Deanna said while she was getting her purse from the truck and locking it up. They found a thick grassy spot surrounded by trees and well hidden from the road. They had beef hot dogs with cheese from the cooler and then bananas for dessert. The girls made one giant bed with many blankets and cuddled together around Deanna. Finally, they were really her children. It took getting John's wickedness out of the way to let love bloom for her. Though she was heartbroken for the girls, she couldn't help but feel God's love and have hope they might find a way to overcome. Deanna fell into a long, deep, and untroubled sleep with Lily in her arms, her first peaceful rest in many, many years. They slumbered for several hours until the sky turned black and the crisp night air woke them. Bridget was the first awake. She looked at Lily sleeping and felt helpless. How could she protect Lily when she couldn't protect herself? Maybe Miss Miller would keep caring for them. Bridget knelt by the tree and prayed very hard like her mother taught her. Bridget's mother died having Lily, and their father couldn't care for them, so they had been in the Millers' care since Lily was 5 days old. That was about 2 years ago. Bridget sometimes had trouble remembering things about her mother, but she never forgot the way they would pray together every night, and she continued it with Lily. Except the last few nights, but that wasn't her fault. She was angry God didn't stop Mr. Miller before he hurt her, but maybe he couldn't. Bridget guessed she'd find out when she went to heaven. Deanna woke up and spotted Bridget praying. She knelt next to the girl and joined her. So did Amanda and Stacy. When they finished, the girls loaded everything in the truck while Deanna warmed a dinner of canned turkey sausage and corn over a fire. The girls were thankful to eat warm food. Okay, everyone, we have to try and drive as long as we can. Don't drink too much water, only enough so you don't get parched. Stacy, put a night diaper on Lily again. Let's see how far we can get without stopping. Amanda, we'll be on this highway for another 927 miles before we turn west, so you can go ahead and lead. Your passengers will probably need to stop sooner, Deanna said while she put the last few items from dinner into the truck. Miss Miller, there aren't many people out on the roads. Should I have Stacy try driving too? Amanda asked. Not now, honey. You have very precious cargo, and we can't afford any attention if her driving is awkward. Let's stop as we need to, but only if it's absolutely necessary. The girls visited the restroom a final time, then everyone got into the vehicles. Deanna followed Amanda onto the highway, and they were on their way again. They had a considerable way to go, but Deanna was optimistic. Amanda, I need the restroom. I can't wait any longer. This time the desperate plea was from Bridget. They had been driving many hours. Amanda hadn't seen any markers or signs in a while, so Bridget may have to go on the side of the road. If we don't see a rest area soon, then we can stop on the road. It's the middle of the night and no one is around. Miss Miller brought essentials in case we had to stop this way, Amanda told the squirming girl. They drove another 10 miles with only empty road and no sign of life. Amanda saw a wide shoulder coming up on the side of the highway, and it had a few bushes for discretion. Bridget, I'm stopping here. Just go behind the bush. No one will see you. Amanda pulled over, and Deanna pulled over behind her. Amanda was worried. Even though they hadn't seen anyone, this stop made them very noticeable if someone did pass by. Bridget wasn't alone. By the time they were done, all the girls took a turn behind the bush. It was the darkest part of night, and no other traffic came through yet. As Deanna pulled onto the road behind Amanda, a car slowed down to make sure it could follow her truck. It was a WPO patrol vehicle. Deanna told herself they were probably making sure everything was fine since cars rarely stopped along the highway. No one should suspect them missing until tomorrow afternoon. If they drove normally and continued on, they shouldn't have a problem. Then the patrol vehicle started flashing its lights. Deanna was going fast, but knew the old work truck couldn't outrun a government-outfitted super vehicle. She started to slow gradually, then turned quickly, drove over the median, and took off racing in the other direction. The patrol vehicle did the same and followed her. She was relieved to see Amanda in her rear view mirror disappearing quickly into the night, continuing down on the highway in the opposite direction. "Girls, I'm going to drive off the road in a minute and go around the tree over there. I need you to jump out quickly when I stop." The twins unbuckled their seatbelts and squished themselves against the passenger door. Lucky had her hand on the release, ready to go. Deanna stopped as the truck swung around the tree with a WPO vehicle on her bumper. The girls tumbled out, and Lucky rolled down the embankment while Jasmine fell hard right next to the tree. Deanna sped away. The WPO vehicle had no time to stop and crushed Jasmine under its massive tires. It continued after Deanna, paying no attention to Jasmine or Lucky. Deanna turned her truck again quickly and drove head-on into the WPO vehicle. She would not let those bastards harm any more of her children. She would do whatever it takes to free them. She knew God would understand. She wasn't ending her life. She was saving the children. The resulting crash rang loud through the quiet night. Deanna's work truck crumpled like old paper. The WPO vehicle's windshield shattered, and the driver's face was impaled by a piece of metal from Deanna's truck. The officer on the passenger side was crushed when the vehicle's nose got smashed flat from the high-speed impact. Lucky was disoriented from the tumble when she shakily stood up. She heard a terrifying crash. She walked to the road and saw the vehicles first. Then she saw red hair flowing into a small ocean of blood next to the tree. She stumbled over to Jasmine and laid down by her sister's broken body. She snuggled close to it for warmth and fell into a numbing sleep with blood pooling around her. "Can you hear me? Are you hurt?" Lucky woke to a worried face staring at her. Lights were flashing everywhere on the road, lighting up the entire canyon. "No," Lucky replied. "Is there anyone else we should be looking for?" the man asked as he scanned the area. Several men and women in WPO emergency response clothes were spread out on the road. She saw two of them taking the remains of Miss Miller out of the truck. They had already taken Jasmine's body away. "No, I'm the only one left." The emergency responders cleaned Lucky's wounds. A gorgeous woman with a beautiful yellow suit and even more beautiful smile approached Lucky. "Hey, sweetie, I'm Agent Washington, and I'm going to take care of you until we get this sorted out," the woman explained while taking Lucky by the hand and leading her to a sporty vehicle. It looked expensive. When she opened the car door for Lucky, the girl caught a glimpse of a gun holstered underneath her suit jacket. Lucky got into the car and buckled her seatbelt while Agent Washington went around to the driver's side. Lucky hadn't seen a gun in real life before. The WPO had banned all citizens not employed by the government from having firearms a few years after she was born. She only recognized it from an old movie they watched about the times before WPO. Those movies were her favorite. The people were free and they seemed to love their children. She wondered if it was make-believe or if it was really like that in the past. "I know Miss Miller, and I know who you are, Luciana. I'm sorry about your sister. What a terrible tragedy. Is there anything I can do to help you? Do you know where the other girls are?" Agent Washington asked while driving down the road. "No, ma'am. I'm just very tired." "Where are we going?" "I'm taking you to the clinic so you can get fixed up. Those wounds need more than a quick cleaning, especially that gash on your head." "Do you know what happened to the other girls from the Miller's home? They may need help too," Agent Washington said in a sincere, caring voice. She seemed genuinely nice, but so did Mr. Miller at first. Lucky knew sometimes monsters had pleasant smiles and sweet voices. She hadn't been called Luciana since her parents were taken away. They were activists fighting against the WPO. It was strange hearing her name from someone that wasn't her mother, especially after 7 years. It was discomforting and unpleasant. She decided to trust her gut and tell the agent nothing. No, Miss Miller took me and Jasmine with her, but I don't know what happened to the other girls. I think they may have already left before us. Agent Washington and Lucky drove in silence for hours until the sun started breaking through the clouds with morning rays. Lucky pretended to be sleeping. By mid-morning, they pulled into a large parking lot in front of the most amazing building. Oversized, colorful sculptures of animals and dinosaurs were around it. And there were several play areas, including the largest slide Lucky had ever seen. Children were everywhere, playing and laughing. Maybe the agent was a good person. Luciana, why don't you go try out that giant slide you're staring at while I go inside and get everything ready for you? I'll be back in a few minutes. Lucky went over to the closest play area and joined the other children. When she saw Agent Washington enter the building, she thought about running away. But where would she go? She didn't have anyone left. This place seemed better than anywhere she stayed before. Maybe she was finally safe. She decided to wait for Agent Washington to come back for her. She couldn't play. She wasn't happy. She missed Jasmine too much and wished she could be here with her. But she did feel hopeful that she found someone who would take care of her. Luciana, the doctor is waiting for you, Agent Washington called out the clinic's front door. The inside of the building was more festive than the outside. Lucky saw a huge mermaid mural with a treasure chest full of mermaid costumes on the floor in front of it. There was a gigantic gaming center with at least 20 different machines and controllers. Everywhere she looked, there were kid-friendly murals, toys, computers, and games. She'd never seen anything like this. All the children were enjoying themselves so much, it was unbelievable. Agent Washington guided her straight through the inner door that led to the examination rooms. When they got to room 3, the agent opened the door and they went inside. A kind-looking doctor and nurse were already waiting. Welcome, Luciana. We're going to help you feel better. Come lay down on the table while we give you medicine to help you relax before we take care of those wounds, the doctor said. Lucky went and laid down like she was told. She noticed the ceiling was painted with flying rainbow unicorns and fluffy clouds. She hadn't felt this safe since before she lost her mother many years ago. The doctor gave her a quick shot that pinched a little. Then the nurse started an IV and it hurt badly, but she trusted them. It was only when the liquid was burning through her veins and they strapped her down to the table that she questioned what was happening to her. She started screaming. The last thing she saw was the happy face of a rainbow unicorn. That was chapter 2 of The Clinic. Things are only going to get more terrifying as we look deeper into my future vision of what could happen. I look forward to seeing you next week for chapter 3, and until then, I hope these stories keep you up at night.